Cultural intelligence, CI or CQ, it's quotient. They have two different acronyms. An individual's capability or ability to deal effectively with situations characterized by cultural diversity. So what does that mean? That means when Narmin goes to Italy and she meets Giovanni, and then she says, hello, Giovanni, talk to me in English because my Italian isn't so good. Then you listen to Giovanni and you think, wait a second, what did he just tell me? So developing cultural intelligence as an English student or an English teacher means, for a teacher, it means that if I were teaching Narmin, then what I would do is I would develop not just English, but also some cultural knowledge that will help her when she arrives to Italy. So, because here's what happens when people go abroad. When people go abroad and they're trying to learn languages, and I will tell you, I've had this experience many times. And here's what I understand. If you're not prepared and have a strong sense of confidence, if this is your first time, do you know what a lot of students do? They're very insecure about their language. They're not confident. They freeze. They go, oh, I don't understand anything he's saying. Now, some people then will never engage again. Others will engage after the culture shock of 1 week. This is what cultural knowledge, acculturation, this is what sort of preparation will help you do. So you have more confidence into the first meeting. This helps soften the landing. Your preparation by understanding difficult English sounds by Italian speakers softens your landing into that new world. You're teaching grammar, but you're also teaching culture at the same time. You're teaching grammar, you're also teaching soft skills. Soft skills are these abilities to get along with people, to be well-liked, to be sociable, to understand how to interact better. Psychological well-being, so you're sort of happy, or at least not depressed. This is, a very serious issue. But English language is now adding a second layer of knowledge to your grammar, to your listening, to your speaking exercises. Let's say you're teaching grammar, because all of us have to learn grammar. And if you're a teacher and you know your student is going to Korea, then you can do this. You can teach, for example, here's an example, adverbs of frequency. Rarely, sometimes, always, never. So we talk about the grammar issues, but then very interestingly, right after that, we can ask a question about Koreans, South Koreans, because I know that some of my students, or if I'm doing one-on-one, I know my students traveling there next month. And I'm going to ask them, look at the content of those examples again. Why do you think Koreans behave this way? What is it about this mentality? And you start to be able to talk about it before you get there. So then you can make deeper observations once you're there. So we break the ice. Break the ice means we start the discussion now. We develop some cultural knowledge and understanding before we get there. I believe that teaching these things should be should be linked very directly to area that's going to directly help you. So if you're not going to go to Korea, then I'm not sure this is the most important. If you're going to go to the US, then I would use a US example. Taboos. Do you see this word taboo here, right here? What are things you shouldn't do? Because in every culture, the taboos are different. If you do something in this culture, you are shunned. If you're shunned, it means you're sort of criticized greatly, and probably you've lost your reputation. Ceremonies, time, time is really interesting. When we say, let's meet at 5 or let's meet at 2, what does that mean in your culture versus what does that mean in their culture? So for example, in China, their idea of time is very strict. So when you say 2 o'clock, let's meet at 2, it means let's meet at 2, not 2:02, not 2:05, but 2. In Spain, if you say let's meet at 2, it means let's meet at 2:20. We can deal with this in role playing. We can have you, a Chinese colleague, a Spanish colleague, and you all have your cue card. For example, you're running 10 minutes late for meetings with both. What would you say to them? And so you have this role playing. After the language, we move over to the culture. And then we talk about being late, because sometimes if you're late once, that's the last chance you get. I remember at Cambridge, I was invited to dinner by my Japanese friend. In America, we eat, we chat a bit, and then we go home. In Japanese culture, when someone invites you to the home, it's very special, and you should spend the whole evening. I didn't know that. And I lost a friend. He was so offended. I left after 2 hours. I said, "Thank you very much. It's a really nice evening." And he never talked to me again. Cultural differences. And if you, the more you understand, the more friends you keep. For example, this is useful culture. How do they greet themselves? How do you greet someone in England? Meeting foreigners, then it's different, because I have to greet them along their culture. But if we're in a setting where it's mainly British students, then I should understand how to greet them, not to give too many kisses. You know, the French do 3, Poles 2, somebody does 1, and you start here, end here. And if you're not sure who you're kissing and where and how many, it can be really an awkward situation. I'll give you an example. Well, first of all, if I'm not sure, I never try to kiss if I'm not completely sure, because that can be very awkward. So, but in Kazakhstan here, you've got mainly a sort of loose liberal religious people, but there are a few very orthodox, very strong religious people where the women don't really touch the men. And I remember one lady who was sort of wearing, she had a headscarf, but nothing else. I went to shake her hand and said, "Very nice to meet you." And she kept her hands to herself. And so I quickly went like this, "Very nice to meet you." Okay. And let me tell you the problem here, if you're not aware of the cultural differences, you can lose that contact because you feel so uncomfortable, you don't ever want to talk to that person again. So if you're aware that in England, no one really shakes hands, and in America, a lot of people do, then that's going to help you. Because if you shake a Brit's hand, they're going to do this. They're going to look at your hand and go, "Okay, this is weird." And they'll do something like this. "Is it over yet?" In America, handshake, no problem. Everyone's shaking hands. This is a great cultural thing to learn. Now, it's part gestures and it's part speech. What do you say to people when you meet them? Or in America, it gets very confusing. "Hey, how are you?" Now, that's not a question. It's a rhetorical question. How are you means, "Hello, nice to meet you." I remember when I first came to Poland, I said, "How you doing?" Everyone told me how they were doing. And I was laughing to myself, because I thought, oh my gosh, I can't say that anymore, because they're actually answering the question. Because that's what normal people do. They answer a question they were asked. So it's mainly the problem with American culture, which is a bit strange. But if you know this, then you can say, "Hey, what's up?" And then suddenly you can walk away with no one feeling embarrassed. Speaking of giving gifts, do you know in America, if you work for a certain government agencies, you are not allowed to receive any gifts. Bribe you means to give you gifts so that you're softer in your criticisms. If you don't know this and you try to give them a gift, they could even get a little bit angry, like, "Look, they're trying to bribe me, giving me money so that I will give them a favor." Money or a gift for a favor in return. That is a bribe, because it's not a practice. It's culturally not accepted. In other countries, they will gladly accept any gift you give them. Is off limits. This is a nice word. Off limits means you can't do it. You can't do it.